sabrosura pa' ti que.
Hello, everyone. This is Pam de Café con Pam, the bilingual podcast that features Latine, people of the global majority who break barriers, change lives, and make the world a better place. Welcome to episode 379 of Café con Pam. Today, it's just you and me, and we are going to drink our coffee and our tea and whatever you want while exploring those calladita norms. We are going to explore today the 5 wounds of Calladita culture, and then at the end, I'm going to answer a listener question. Have you ever found yourself feeling like you're holding back from speaking your truth? Or maybe you felt disconnected from who you truly are. You may be overwhelmed by the weight of other people's expectations or opinions, fear of being judged, etc., etc. Well, I get it. These experiences are not uncommon, especially for us Latinas, first gen, eldest daughters, eldest youngest daughter, who were raised with phrases like, calladita te ves más bonita. You look prettier when you're quiet. I am here to tell you that these feelings are connected to what I have come up with, the 5 wounds of calladita culture. Over my years of coaching, working with hundreds of individuals and exploring my own voice, I began to notice the patterns. If you have followed me for quite a while, you know I used to call these the 5 principles of Calladita culture. There were actually 7 originally. We narrowed them down to 5, and now they are the 5 wounds of Calladita culture. Because we heal a wound, we unlearn a principle, and I think when we tune into that inner healing work, it's more profound. So today we're going to have just a taste. We're not going to have the whole cafecito with a meal. We're just going to have a taste so you can begin to recognize them in your own life. That's my goal for today, is for you to have an understanding and start recognizing the wounds in your own life. These 5 wounds keep us quiet, stuck, overlooked, overwhelmed, and underpaid. The 5 wounds could show up in your life in different ways. You could undercompensate the wound or overcompensate the wound. The 5 wounds were developed from a Latina perspective, so that's important to note. That's who I am. I'm a Latina. I'm a first generation. I'm an eldest daughter. Every part of my body of work is developed first and foremost from my own lived experience. However, you can apply the wounds however you want. You can notice them in your life, how they show up in different ways. So let's get started. Primero, first we have the wound of silence. Imagine you're in a meeting. You have a brilliant idea, but something inside you says, mejor no digo nada. I better not say anything because what if it's not a good idea? And like all these whispers start getting into your head. Maybe this is fear of judgment. The whisper might represent the voice of an elder saying you should respect authority. You are maybe in a room filled with people with authority. This wound is the wound that keeps us small and invisible. But you know what? Our voices deserve to be heard. Number 2, we have the wound of power. This one's a little tricky because maybe at some point you may have given your power away. Maybe you felt like someone else knew better. Maybe you found yourself being overly controlling on the other side because you fear being taken advantage of. That's the wound of power. You can undercompensate or you can overcompensate them. You can either show up as with no power, you can victimize yourself a lot, or you can overcompensate by protecting your power so much. Then we have the wound of identity. Mira, listener. This one is a big one because how many of us have hidden parts of ourselves just to fit in? Maybe we tried to stand out so others may accept us, and we did it so much that we lost sight of who we really are. This wound makes us question whether we belong and how we can stay true to ourselves while still being seen. It's a big one. Then we get the wound of commitment. Now, this is the wound that helps us engage with our dreams, our responsibilities, and this is the one that we may connect to if we find it hard to commit to our goals. If you are one of those people that it's undecisive, you might have the wound of commitment or the overcompensation of it. You may take on too much. You may just have an overwhelming amount of things that you've committed to because you're afraid of letting others down. Either way, this is the one that keeps us overwhelmed and disconnected from our true purpose. And last but not least, we have the wound of worth. This is the one that keeps us underpaid, undervalued, or constantly striving to prove our value through external success. This is the feeling that we need to, quote, earn our place. Because in a way, when this wound is within us, we may feel that just being us is not enough. I know. You might be like, oh my gosh, I feel the wounds. Some of these or all of them may resonate with you. Maybe you felt one or all the wounds in different stages of your life. And the truth is, we've all been there. Anytime I have introduced the 5 wounds to people, I often, if not all the time, I get people at the end telling me like, ooh, maybe I'm not Latina, but I still resonate with it. Or yeah, 100%. I grew up with this and I have undercompensated it or I have overcompensated it just to protect myself. Something to remember is that these wounds are part of our culture and many of us grew up with them. Many of us have also even passed them on. Now, the good news is that now you have awareness. And awareness is the first step towards knowing that you have a wound there and it may need some washing, it may need some disinfecting, it may need some healing. So today I want you to think about this. Where do these wounds show up for you? Are you holding back? Are you staying quiet? Are you hiding parts of yourself to make others comfortable? Are you perhaps, do you hear that you're being too loud? Is that a form of protection? Are you pushing yourself beyond limits because you feel is the only way to prove your worth? Listeners, healing these wounds is not to fix ourselves. We don't fix ourselves. We recognize, we accept that which is holding us back. And once we do, then we can show up differently. If you're listening to this episode as I'm releasing it, come to October 13th, Café con Pam live experience. This is what the workshop is going to be all about. We are going to dive deeper into the 5 wounds of Calladita culture, and we are going to do a connection with our inner child. We are going to literally go inward and find ourselves, find our voice again. So the truest version of you can come out and exist in the world as you were meant to this whole time. If you listen to this after October 13, 2024, no worries. I'm sure at that point, there's going to be other places where you can find more about Calladita culture. But I hope you join me on this journey of healing, exploration, and liberation. To quickly recap, the 5 wounds: the wound of silence, the wound of power, the wound of identity, the wound of commitment, and the wound of worth. Because being calladita might be what we learned, but thriving is what we're here for. Now, let me answer a listener question. This question is from Anonymous. And it says, what does your partner think about your tapping? Is this something you do in private or are you open with him about it? My partner is a very logical thinking engineer and thinks this kind of stuff, like tapping, astrology, and tarot cards, is weird and made up. I don't care and do it anyway, and he respects the fact that I'm into it. Just wondering what your dynamic with your partner is like related to these things. I love this question. Thank you, listener, anonymous listener, for asking. And I'm going to answer this question as succinctly and as quickly as possible. So in the beginning, to give you a little context, everyone, I've been with David for 8 years. And so in the very, very beginning, I may have hesitated because there may have been that whisper, that wound of silence saying, and the wound of identity saying, do you need to share that? Especially because for me, I grew up with a brujo dad. I grew up with a father who taught me Reiki when I was 11 years old, who talked to me about metaphysics and quantum mechanics. when I was really, really young. And so I also, on the other side, I got to witness the judgment and the shame in a way that people gave him for being different, for not being this like Catholic son. And so that wound of silence and the wound of identity was something that I had within me when it came to my spirituality, because I had witnessed it in my father the whole time. And so while the whisper may have come when I met David, at the same time, I had to remind myself that that's who I am. And him accepting it or not was going to actually help me determine if he was my person. Now, I don't want to give him that much power in my life, because he also doesn't have to take on all the roles. We don't have to, as my life partner, doesn't mean that he is going to come to retreats with me and we're going to like do some plant medicine together. It doesn't have to be that way, because I allow the contrast of our personalities or beliefs of who we are to also enrich a relationship, and it allows us to engage in conversation and support each other and learn from one another, because he grew up in a very different way than I did. And so allowing us to be who we are and stand in our power, our truth, our voice, and our identity is something that has allowed us to continue to accept that we may believe in different things, and that's okay. And he respects it 100%. We've been in various instances, I'm sure you can think of, over the span of 8 years, where I've needed to do tapping on myself. And there was one specific that I was very triggered. I was crying, and it was a very deep inner child. It wasn't an inner child, actually. It was a 20-something version of me who needed support. And I was super overwhelmed. And he said, I'll tap with you. And we sat down, and he sat in front of me, and I was tapping, and he was doing it with me. And then at the end, I was like, did you feel anything? He was like, no, but I was doing it for you. I wasn't doing it for myself, because I'm here to support you. And so that moment allowed me to see, he doesn't have to believe it, but he can believe that I believe it. And that is good for me. I hope this is useful. Please feel free to elaborate. Thank you, listener, for this question. Thank you for continuing to honor what works for you, even if your partner doesn't fully get it. Continue to stand in your power. Continue to own your truth. Continue to be outspoken about it, because that's what you believe to be true. So, listeners, thank you so much for being here today. Remember the 5 wounds. Remember to come to Cafe Con Pam live experience. If you are in San Diego, if you're in LA, if you're in Phoenix, it's a drive away. If you have listener questions, go to cafeconpam.com/contact. We'll have all the links in the show notes where you can continue to ask questions. I love answering these. They're so fun. And we have a couple that we've saved for future episodes. But this was one that I knew I had to answer and connect it back to the wounds in a way. Don't forget to follow at Cafe Con Pam Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Tag me. Let me know if this episode resonated or not, or if you feel like you've overcompensated or undercompensated on one or all of the wounds. Would love to hear that. Share it with a friend. Share it with your primas, with your tias, with whoever you think they might resonate with. I think this is one episode that you can definitely kind of listen to and then discuss, because why not? You can explore a lot, even in conversation. And I think my goal is for my work to help you expand into the possibilities and allow yourself to get to know yourself better. Bueno, listeners, thank you so much for being here today. Como siempre, sigue brillando, stay shining on your voice, stand in your power. And you know your truth better than anyone else, and no one can question it. Nos vemos a la próxima.